Hey everyone, welcome back to the third session of Reach People Movement. My name is Dino Rizzo, and I'm so excited about our time together today. We've already had a couple amazing weeks of discussion about evangelism and diving into the practical ways to reach the one. Today's topic is going to help us really be more effective as we walk out those first two ideas. Today we're going to be talking about building a bridge. So many people are just far from God and got a lot going on in their life. He has given us the privilege of connecting with others, building a bridge so that they can connect back to the heart of God. I think that's amazing. You know, there's a lot of barriers today when you think about it. So many barriers that divide so many people. And we live in a polarized society, and we got our work cut out for us to truly get on eye level with others and connect them effectively for the cause of Jesus Christ. And honestly, the best way we can do this is by serving people. The Apostle Paul talks about this, as clear as you could get in 1 Corinthians chapter 9. Here's what he says: I've become a slave to all people to bring many to Christ. When I was with the Jews, I lived like a Jew to bring Jews to Christ. When I was with those who followed Jewish law, I too lived under the law. Even though I'm not subject to the law, I did this so that I could bring Christ to those who are under the law. This is amazing. When I was with the Gentiles who do not follow the Jewish law, I too lived apart from the law so that I could bring them to Christ. But I do not ignore the law of God. I obey the law of Christ. When I'm with those who are weak, I share their weakness. For I want to bring the weak to Christ. Yes, I try to find common ground. That's an amazing phrase. With everyone, doing everything I can to save some. This is incredible. Another version says, become all things to all people. That's about building connection. This verse from 1 Corinthians 9 is actually the life verse of our guest today. I know he's going to talk to you about it, give us a great perspective on how to apply this to reach more people. And I don't think there's anyone who could speak about leading people to Christ through relationship like Pastor Edwin Jones. He's an incredible leader. He's a dear friend. So Pastor Edwin, we are so grateful to have you with us today on RPM.
Man, it's an honor and privilege to be a part of this conversation, Pastor Daniel. Thank you so much for reaching out. We are part of the ARC family. Love the ARC family. Our church is what it is, in much in part because of ARC and your leadership, Pastor Greg, and so many others. So thank you for being family.
Well, you always look good, my man. You always look good. You never come to the game where you ain't dressed. So you look good. Love the name of your church. Give me a minute on the bridge. The bridge.
Man, I could take a whole day. Let me just kind of try to give the Cliff Notes version of it. We felt God calling us to plant a church back in our hometown. We never originally felt, in our mind anyway. We were like, man, we're not going to go back home, do ministry. We kind of thought we'd venture off, move to another state. And then God really started building kind of this burden in our hearts for our hometown and where we grew up in Hampton, kind of Newport News area. And one of the things that always kind of captured the essence of my wife's, life and my life is that we've always found ourselves in these different connections with different people.
Wow.
Who look different than us, who talk different, just different backgrounds. My wife was a military family. She moved all over the world. So we always felt like we had these different connections to people. And so when we felt the call to plant the church and we were thinking about the name, I remember I was driving on a bridge here in our city. And that's when the name came, the bridge, and thinking about the bridge and how it connects one land to another piece of land. It connects places that are separate and that are disconnected and brings them together as one. And so we felt like that is the essence of gospel. That's what Jesus does. He is the bridge. And so he calls us to be bridge builders as well.
Well, that's why you're the best at reaching people. And it's so important that you kind of help us with this resource, because it is about building a bridge. And I think every person in their heart, they want to do that. Maybe it's a neighbor, maybe it's a coworker, maybe it's someone that's in their past, maybe it's someone they just met or they've noticed. And so, the bridge to reach people, I think the number one most used bridge is relationships.
Absolutely.
It's just the gospel is transferred relation. Of course, God uses our churches and online and all these different things, but relationships, how are relationships key to reaching people that you've seen?
Well, I think it's kind of hard to reach people that you're disconnected from. And so I think part of being able to to see transformation take place in the lives of other people is you have to be willing to get close to them. And one of the things that we see that marks the ministry of Jesus was he was never afraid to get close to people. So you think about people like the woman with the issue of blood, somebody who was considered to be ceremonially unclean. If you touch her, you would be unclean. But he is in proximity of her, and she reaches out to him, and now she's transformed. You think about people who were blind like Bartimaeus, and Jesus laying hands on them and connecting with them. And so I think connectivity is oftentimes the byproduct of closeness. So we got to get close to people in order to connect with them, in order to see some transformation. And so I think what God calls us to do as followers of Christ is to be willing to get close to people. Jesus was never afraid to get close to people. He was oftentimes called the friend of sinners.
Wow.
And I think our greatest witness is when we are willing to get close to people, no matter who they are, no matter what their background is, no matter what they've done, no matter their sin, their shame, their stronghold, because that's ultimately what God did for us through somebody else as well. So.
That's good. It's interesting you were talking about that, because kind of sticking with the bridge thing, the idea of relationship is the bridge, reaching people, being the bridge. Now, there's some bridges that are short. It's easy. And then there's some long bridges.
Right.
And then there's some bridges that are easy to go over. And then there's some that, man, they go real high. And they're a little nervous. So to help in being a bridge to people, some people it's easy, man, invite them to church. There are other people, it's a long bridge. Some people, the bridge is very sturdy, it's wide, it's easy. Then reaching some people, man, you get nervous. Talk me through that for a second as it relates to reaching people, or you've seen happen right there in your own community.
I think you hit it on the head, man. You just made me think about it. There's a bridge here in our area, in the Hampton Roads area. It's called the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel. It is one of the longest bridges in the country. I despise going on that bridge because it is very narrow. It is very long. It goes for miles at a time. It connects from Virginia Beach to the Eastern Shore. It goes high at some points. And my wife will tell you, if there's one bridge I do not like to cross, it is that bridge, because it's uncomfortable. But in order for us to cross over to get to our destination, to get our family to the destination that we want to get to, we have to be willing to cross over that bridge. And I think it is the same when it comes to reaching different types of people. There's going to be some times where you have to be willing to get uncomfortable a little bit. There's going to be some times where you have to be willing to be stretched a little bit. It's not going to happen overnight. You know, some places and some people you may be able to reach just like that. Others it may take years. It may take months. It may take decades. And so I think if we are called and we're compelled with that conviction to reach people, and it's like, okay, I'm willing to be uncomfortable for the sake of somebody else. And I think that's what Jesus did. Like, he was willing to risk comfort level by going to the cross to reach us. And I think there's a notion in our day and time where we think about the word love. We've been doing a series in our church recently with love and happiness. And one of the things we talked about how is love is never convenient. It's always costly. Yeah. It's going to cost us something. So it's going to cost us some time. It's going to cost us some energy. It may require us to be a little bit more patient with people. And it may require us to sacrifice in a greater way compared to other times. And so, but it's all in the name of being able to reach people.
Yeah. Well, you're a great preacher. You're a great pastor. Man, you're a student and a leader. You're a learner. I mean, the degrees that you have, all that you've learned. You came and planted a church, but we all found this out. And it's the same way with a small business. It's the same way with starting your own workout group. I mean, people don't flock. You got to go get people. And so you planted a church, but you're a great preacher, very, very knowledgeable of the word, but you had to become a friend to Hampton.
Absolutely.
And so tell me a little bit about, because I think it's so important as it relates to relationships. How do you reach people through relationship? Of being able to realize what you said, E, I call you Pastor E. What you said is, I've got to be a friend to the sinner. Absolutely. How have you done that right there? Because you've had to do that for 7 years in getting that church up.
Absolutely. For me, I love people. My wife is an introvert by nature. I think to some degree I'm an extrovert, so I get my energy just by being around people. I love just the connect with people. One of the things that had been doing pre-COVID was my office was our local Panera. Panera in our community is similar to what Starbucks is, and we have some Starbucks in our community, but Panera is like the gathering spot here in our city. And so I would make Panera my office usually 3 to 4 times out of the course of the week. I'd be there most of the day. I'd do my meetings there. I'd work on sermons there. I'm vision casting there. But I did that to position myself to be able to reach people, to build relationship with people who work there, people who may just kind of walk in the doors. One story in particular, I remember it was a Friday, like it was yesterday. It was a Friday, raining outside. I was getting ready to kind of pack my stuff up. It was about 3, 4 in the afternoon. And a young guy, maybe in his early 20s, came and walked by. He saw me with my Bible out. I was getting ready for Sunday. He was like, "Hey, man, you mind if I interrupt you?" I was like, "Yeah, no problem." And he said, "Man, I'm looking for a church. You know, I just moved to this area. You know, I'm in the military, about 20 years old. I just got stationed here from Alabama. Do you know of any churches here in this area? Because I saw your hat that you got on. I see your Bible, and I just thought, you know, maybe I'll ask him." I said, "Yeah, man, actually, I know of a church in our community." And long story short, a good one, you know. Long story short, now he's in our church. He's serving. He's found spiritual family here. And that all just started just by, if I were to boil it down to one word, availability. Just trying to make myself available as much as possible, just in different spaces or even in consistent space regularly. So I think availability is massive.
Yeah, because it's like you put yourself in a you were there, you were at Panera's, you were available, you were kind, obviously. You were attracted. Hey man, what's up? How y'all doing? You know, it's interesting you say that. I was reading my Bible the other day on a plane. And, you know, sometimes you feel a little intimidated reading my Bible. When I was finished up, a lady stopped me who was a flight attendant, said, "Hey, what part of the Bible were you reading?" We had a great chat. It was almost like just the reading of my Bible, not in a showy way or y'all check this out, read my Bible, was a bridge to a conversation. I think sometimes looking for that crossover conversation.
Awesome.
I think it is massive, Edwin, and Pastor Edwin, in reaching people, that crossover conversation. So you're always looking to invite, man, whether it's Easter or it's a series. How have you used those conversations, leading a small group? What you did on the campus ministry, a lot of people, because of their city as a campus, you were doing campus ministry at ODU, which is, you know, that's a higher education, man. You got all kinds of people on there.
Sure.
How did you evangelize and reach people in all those situations, just with crossover conversations?
Yeah, one of my life scriptures is 1 Corinthians chapter 9, where Paul says, "To the Jew, I became a Jew. To the Gentile Greek, I became a Greek. To the poor, I became poor. To the rich, I became rich. I become all things to all people, so that by all possible means, I might save some." And so for me, that's kind of been like my life scripture, where I want to meet people where they are. I believe ministry is best done not when we're asking people to come to us, but when we're taking the initiative to go to them. And so that really kind of shapes so much of how we do ministry at our church, how I approach ministry, even when we're doing campus ministry. What that looks like is we may have to, part of us going to people is contextualizing how we do ministry. What is it that it takes to be able to reach people? What language do they understand this in? How can we get creative to be able to capture the attentions and the hearts of people so we can be able to give them this life-changing message that we have? And so I think so much of it is just being able to meet people where they are, to enter into people's world, which is, you know, that's the incarnation essentially, is I'm entering into your world. I'm getting into your life. I'm understanding your likes and just the things that cause you to tick. And I'm looking for a way to be able to meet you where you are, to build this connection so that way your life can be transformed.
I like that. Build the connection. What can we do to build the connection?
Yeah. And that's something that we kind of share that a lot with, you know, our church. One of the things I share with our leaders is I call it the ABCs of leadership or / discipleship. And that's always be connecting. Always be looking for opportunities to connect. So whether that's on your job, whether it's in your family, whether it's in your neighborhood, just always be looking for opportunities to be able to connect with people at your gym. I have people that I played basketball with at the local YMCA before COVID hit that have come to our church. And just like every sphere, I'm just trying to look for opportunities in which I can connect with people so I can connect them to Christ.
Man, that's good. You probably preached on being abridged a few times.
Just a few times. Just a few, just a few times.
Just a few times. Hey, so when I came to Christ, I didn't just show up in church. And so the church came to me. They did an outreach. It changed my heart. And then I went to church. And the church that I started attending, Myrtle Beach, come on, shout out to the East Coast, Myrtle Beach. But here's what was interesting to me. I didn't know that much about church, but immediately I got in a small group. Really, it was the small group, let me say that was the incubator of that seed, of that faith that started growing me. And then then I started figuring out church. How have you seen small groups be so important in building relationships, being the bridge, reaching people? I know that's important to you as a pastor, building community. That's a value of your church. Talk to me about the power of small groups, even how important it is right now that someone's in a small group and can use it as a bridge to reach people.
Man, I share with our church small groups. We call them connect groups just to keep the bridge language going. But our connect groups / small groups, we say it's the backbone of our church. Sundays are great. Our worship experiences are great. It's awesome to come in here. But it's not until you are in these groups where you're building relationships with people, where people are able to walk alongside you, or you are able to walk alongside them as you're going through not just the highs of life, but even some of those valley moments, some of those low moments. And it's in those moments I feel like where there's a depth to our discipleship. And I think even in the climate that we're in right now, different obviously environments are doing different things and things of that nature. We have seen that the people who have connected with our connect groups in this season of COVID have been at a greater level of spiritual health than those who aren't. We've seen people who have just been trying to explore the faith and, just looking for community. And some people have we've seen more of an uptick in connect groups this semester now that they're all online than I think we have previously. And we're still trying to figure that whole thing out. Like, why is that? I think it just reveals that people are looking for community, and people, I think, sometimes are more comfortable coming into a smaller environment than it is into a larger environment. So sometimes that smaller environment now becomes the bridge to the larger environment.
Yeah, you said exactly what I was thinking, because the idea is that is it still a win that I invite someone to a small group and they come do it? I'm trying to get them to church. I think it's a win. I think it's a huge win.
Huge. Yeah.
And that is so good. We talked about this before. We are living in attention time. It's hard to talk to anybody, and people are upset about everything. Hey man, my milk's vitamin D. Mine's 2%. Mine's skin. People mad at everything right now.
Everything.
So how are you reaching people in not only a diverse world right now, a little bit of a hostile from 360 degree? How are you encouraging people? Let's keep being about the Great Commission. Let's keep being about reaching people. And here are some hints or some practical ways in this world where people it's more polarized. Talk me through that, because you're helping ARC do that. Tell me what that looks like for you.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things, I think you said something that I think captures the climate that we are in many ways. And it's that kind of the spirit of this hostility that I think is present. And I think one of the only things that can combat a spirit of hostility is a spirit of humility.
Wow.
So I think before we can kind of really begin to, tear down divisive walls that may be existent, we have to come with a humble posture. Bible talks about how God opposes the proud but gives grace to the humble. And I think humility has to be the way forward before we kind of get into anything else. And so what does that look like? Meaning that we have to realize that we don't know everything, that we may get it wrong sometimes. We have to be willing to listen and to, once again, enter into the world of other people. So that way we can, have a greater perspective. Because I think sometimes if we just stay in our own little silos and in our, I call them sanctified huddles, then we never get into the world of anybody else. So we don't know the plight of other people. We don't know the struggles of other people. And so, Now what happens is we just continue to perpetuate a narrative of division. So I think we have to have humble spirits that are what James 1 says, quick to listen, slow to speak. I think if we would just take a step back and just humble ourselves and say, hey, I want to hear your heart. I want to hear your story. Tell me about your experiences. Tell me why you feel that way. And not where we're listening to respond, but we're listening to learn.
Yeah.
That humble posture, I think, is where it starts. And I think when you kind of get from that place, now we can be intentional with cultivating environments where there can be a sense of connection and a sense of conversation and camaraderie and community, where you have people who come from different, whether it's political lenses, whether it's racial, ethnic lenses,
right.
whether it's different backgrounds, where now we've established a common ground because we're saying we're all in this together. And now we can begin to cultivate intentional relationships with people who are different because we have that right heart. And so I think humility, intentionality, and I think most of all, it also comes back to our theology. So you mentioned the Great Commission. When Jesus says, go make disciples, he says it make disciples of all nations. That word is ethnos, ethnicities. And so I think when we think sometimes of what Jesus came to do, it's easy to kind of focus on the vertical. But as we both know, that cross had two beams, vertical and horizontal. And so if we focus on one more than the other, then I think what happens is we begin to rob the cross of its power. So God is not just concerned with horizontal relationships. No, he's concerned with the vertical. But he's also not just concerned with the vertical. No, he's concerned with the horizontal. So we love God. We love people. And so I think those things, it helps to shape how we go about tearing down walls, building connectivity, seeing racial tensions being dealt with from a true gospel lens. Because I think the gospel speaks to all of those things. It speaks to the spiritual, and it speaks to those natural things as well.
Man, you have great theology, Pastor Edwin. Really, just listening to you. If I'm sitting and watching this, I want to encourage you. You're hearing great theology, the study of God, theology, because what you said is that cross is love God, love people. It is. Right. I mean, Jesus' greatest commandment. Got to get this one right. Love God, love people. And because I was talking to someone the other day, and they were getting ready to do a serve. We were getting ready to do a serve moment. And and the lady looked at me. She was with her two daughters. She says, "I'm a little nervous today about serving because I know people are the tensions are high." Mm-hmm. And I get that. I get that fear. Mm-hmm. I get that high, that heart rate of serving.
Sure. Yeah.
And I just told her, I said, "Listen, the love of God, the compassion of Jesus, the truth of the gospel will win in your compassionate act today."
Absolutely.
And you're seeing that happen in your church, male, female, young, old, military, non-military, Cavalier fans, West Virginia fans, Old Dominion
Laker fans, all that.
You got them all. And then you have black, white, Hispanic. I'm sure you have Asian. I mean, you have a diverse church.
Yeah.
But yet you're doing something together and engaging the community, serving people, reaching people. And it can be done. Fear does not have to drive. Can you speak to that for a moment to a person who just says, I really want to make a difference? Yeah. These are just hard times.
Yeah. Well, I think when we think about the cross, there was nothing easy about the cross. That was hard work. There wasn't nothing easy about getting lashed 40 plus times and getting beaten beyond recognition. But that's what love was. That's love in action.
Yeah.
And so when Jesus tells us to follow him, he tells us, hey, pick up your cross. It's going to be bloody work. You're going to have to get your hands a little bit dirty. This is what it costs to love people. Love people that you are comfortable with, to love people that you're not comfortable with. It means sometimes we got to, as he also says, we have to be willing to deny ourselves. And so I got to go the extra mile. It's going to be uncomfortable sometimes, but I think you hit the nail on the head. The reward of it, that's why we do it. So I think about Hebrews chapter 12, when the Bible talks about we fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and finisher of our salvation. He endured the cross because of the joy that was set before him. And that joy was the fact that there's going to be a family of people of every nation, tribe, tongue, and language that are being put together because of this work that I'm doing. So even for me, if I'm, loving people and serving people who may be different than me, the joy in it is seeing that their needs are going to get met spiritually, tangibly, emotionally, physically. So if I can just kind of push through and persevere by the strength of God, by the grace of God, through some of the awkwardness, through some of the difficulty, the joy on the other side of that far outweighs it all. And that's why we do it.
Yeah, you think about, and I know you've seen this happen. You think about the work you've done in loving someone, caring for someone, being there for someone, calling someone, texting someone, checking up on someone, going the second mile, what you said, bringing the meal, sending the card, going by and checking on them. All of a sudden, when there's that moment where they say, "Can you pray for me?"
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
would you mind if I go to that small group, or would you pray for my daughter? All of a sudden, there's that little window that opens. Boy, the joy. Or hey, how about this? They come to church and give their life to Christ.
Yeah.
That joy.
That's it.
You're just so grateful you did the work. You did the love. You did the extra. You did the noticing. Let me ask you this, just because you said something at the beginning that I think is super important. You said you're an extrovert. Ariel is an introvert. So talk to me. Because I think there's a myth out there, because I'm an introvert, I can't reach people.
Absolutely.
How have you seen your wife make an impact, or speak to that for a moment?
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because she and I talk about that all the time. And oddly enough, we've been married for almost 10 years. We've been together all the way since college, so almost like 17 years we've been together total. Oddly enough, as you know, being married, you kind of start to take on some of the traits of your spouse. So I've kind of sometimes become more introverted and she's become more extroverted. It's funny how that's happened. I never saw it happen. But one of the things that we've always kind of talked about is being realizing that, okay, my proclivity does not preclude me from God's purpose. So having that understanding, so I might have a natural bent to be more introverted, but that doesn't stop the call of God that he's called me to make disciples, to love people, to serve people. And so I think that what it does is it begs me to ask the question, how can I do that in light of how maybe God has wired me, how God has gifted me? So the way she may go into loving, serving people may look a little bit different than the way she's not going to go to Panera and set up shop every day during the course of the week. She's like, no, I need my own space. I'm exhausted. By the time I leave Panera, I'm charged up. I'm like, hey, let's go. When's the next one? So I think you have to kind of discover your uniqueness. I think every believer has a universal call and universal gifting to reach people. But I think within that, there's also a unique set of abilities that God gives us to be able to reach people in our own way. And so one of the things that she does as an introvert is she's very intentional with gathering, whether it's women or other people, just in much smaller settings. She's leading a connect group right now, and they're walking through the book of Jude together, just for women. And she's like, oh my gosh, this is the best connect group I've ever led in the history of our church. And she has her group of women. They're invested, they're engaged. She's pointing at them, she's receiving from them. And so I think you have to kind of find your unique way in which God wants to use you. I don't think it's like a one size fits all. I think that's the beauty of the body of Christ, is that we've all been gifted in different ways. And so whether you're an extrovert, there may be a certain way that you may be comfortable reaching people, having those conversations with the perfect stranger. If you're an introvert, it might be a little bit different. And at the same time, being willing to stretch, because I think sometimes we can maybe lean too much on, okay, I'm like this, so that means I can't do this. No, sometimes God wants you to stretch a little bit, to be a little uncomfortable, so that way others can be impacted.
Yeah, that's good. The other day I was with someone, and my daughter has a dog, and so we had to put the dog down. It was a tough day. And I was with someone, and they're very quiet. They're very reserved. And I just mentioned it. And the person looked at me, she said, can I just take a moment and pray for your daughter and for that pain? And most people are like, yeah, you put a dog down. And it was like, God, that was so kind. And that person was so in tune. Yeah. They listen well, hear something. And it blessed me. And I just thought, man, what a value. Yeah. To be that in tune. When I'm running, man, I'm like, what's up? Someone's dialed in. Hearing what others don't hear.
Yep.
And so dialed in. Man, Evan, I have so appreciate. I love the value that you have. And we're going to put up some ways that you can connect with Pastor Edwin's church and a lot of things he's writing and saying. He's a voice that we need to be hearing today as it relates to reaching people. And I'm so grateful. So I'm going to ask you a question I've asked some of our guests and some of those that can speak to this topic. So here's my question for you. I want you to wrap up with me. Hey, I'm Pastor Edwin, and this is how I reach people. Finish that sentence.
I'm Pastor Edwin, and the way I reach people is by meeting them where they are. By meeting them where they are. I will come to you. I will come get you. I will come reach you. Whatever it takes, I'll come get you.
Wow. That's so good.
That's my heart.
That is so good. That is so good. Hey, Pastor Edward, thanks so much for being a part of RPM.
Man, thank you so much. Honored to add value and be a part of this. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Well, there was so much truth in this discussion with Pastor Edwin, so many ideas to talk through. So let's get right to our discussion. Be sure to share your biggest takeaway with your group and lean into these discussion questions so that you can become even more equipped to build a bridge to the people around you. And remember, we're focusing on building a bridge to someone else so that Jesus can walk over it. Enjoy your time with your group. We'll see you next week.